My sister Lauren stood in the middle of our mother's living room in suburban Minneapolis, tears streaming down her face while our brother Jake collected his $50 bet from our cousin Tyler. Mom sat there with her notepad, actually writing down which insults made Lauren cry the hardest, like she was conducting some twisted psychological experiment on her own daughter. When I finally found the courage to speak up and tell her this was beyond cruel, she looked at me with those cold eyes and said if Lauren could just learn to take a joke like a normal person, maybe family gatherings wouldn't be so dramatic. That was 3 months ago, and I kept my silence then, just like I'd done for the past 15 years. This morning, everything changed. Lauren wasn't crying anymore. She was standing tall, presenting evidence that would shatter our family's carefully constructed facade, and now Mom was the one struggling to maintain composure. You see, my younger sister Lauren had always been the one who cried at family events, and for years I'd resented her for it. Growing up as the oldest of 4 children in our Minneapolis household meant I absorbed the worst of everything. I got the burnt edges of the meatloaf, the hand-me-down clothes that were already worn when they reached me, and when anything went wrong in our house, I was the first one they blamed, regardless of who was actually responsible. There were nights when I went to bed hungry because there wasn't enough food for everyone, and as the oldest, I was expected to sacrifice without complaint. By the time I turned 20, I had developed an armor so thick that nothing could penetrate it. Independence wasn't just a trait I possessed. It was my survival mechanism. My parents had successfully created an environment where asking for help was seen as weakness, where needing anything from anyone marked you as a burden to the family. Lauren, being the youngest at 26 now, never seemed to adapt to this harsh reality. She was still crying at every family gathering we attended. Someone would make a seemingly innocent comment about her choice of career as a social worker, and the tears would start flowing. We'd be discussing holiday plans, and she'd have a complete emotional breakdown over something as simple as which restaurant to choose for Easter brunch. Even our extended family members, the ones who only saw us during major holidays, had started calling her dramatic little Lauren when they thought she couldn't hear them. What killed me inside, what I couldn't understand for the longest time, was that she kept coming back. After every painful gathering, she'd send these long, heartfelt text messages apologizing for being too sensitive, promising she was working on controlling her emotions better. She never forgot anyone's birthday, sending thoughtful cards with personal messages to each family member. She was the one who drove Mom to every medical appointment without being asked, who helped our aging grandmother with grocery shopping every week, who volunteered to host holiday dinners even though she knew she'd end up in tears before dessert was served. But the moment you put her in a room with our family, she'd crumble within an hour as if being around us triggered some deep, inexplicable pain. Last month, I was at Jake's apartment in St. Paul, helping him transfer all his data to his new phone. He'd just gotten the latest model and needed help moving his photos and contacts. He stepped out to grab us some beers from the corner store, leaving his old phone on the kitchen counter, still logged into all his social media accounts and messaging apps. A notification popped up from a group chat, and I saw my sister Emma's name with a laughing emoji next to it. The preview message said something about Lauren and points and taking the lead this week. My curiosity got the better of me. Being Jake's older sister, I felt I had certain snooping privileges, especially when it involved our family. So I picked up the phone and opened the group chat. What I found made my blood run cold. The group was called Family Fun -1, and it had everyone in it except for Lauren and me. Jake, Emma, our brother Noah, our cousins, aunts, uncles, even our mother. The only family members missing were Lauren and myself. The messages went back 3 years, thousands upon thousands of them. My hands started shaking as I scrolled up through the history. They had created an elaborate point system for making Lauren cry. 20 points if you could make her cry before dinner was served. 50 points if you triggered what they called a full bathroom meltdown where she'd lock herself in and sob. Bonus points were awarded for creativity, for making her cry without her realizing it was intentional, for getting her to apologize afterward. There were screenshots of her apology texts with laughing reactions from multiple family members, videos of her crying at gatherings with running commentary about whose technique worked best, analyzing her reactions like she was some kind of experiment. I found a message from Noah from last Easter that said he bet $50 he could make her cry by mentioning our deceased father during grace. The response from Emma was pure cruelty. She was already tearing up, and we hadn't even started eating yet. They planned specific triggers for each gathering, coordinating their attacks like military strategists. They'd literally practice insults in the group chat, workshopping them to see which ones would break her fastest. Our cousin Ashley had posted a video from our grandmother's 90th birthday, where they'd deliberately given Lauren the wrong address for the restaurant. The video showed her arriving an hour late to the correct location, sobbing and apologizing profusely while everyone acted irritated with her for ruining the timing of the surprise. My stomach churned as I continued reading. There were detailed discussions about her weak points: her weight, her career choice, her single status, her sensitivity about our father's death, her struggle with anxiety. They'd identified every vulnerability and created strategies to exploit each one. They even had a shared document where they tracked their scores, competing to see who could cause the most emotional damage each month. Just then, Jake walked back into the apartment, immediately seeing his phone in my hand. The color drained from his face when he saw what was on the screen. "We need to talk about this," I said, my voice barely containing my rage. He shrugged, grabbing his phone back with a casualness that made me want to scream. "Look, Sarah, we just need somewhere to vent about her constant dramatics. It's not our fault she can't handle basic family interaction. If she wasn't so sensitive, we wouldn't need the group chat. She brings it on herself." I knew if we kept talking, I would do something I'd regret. The urge to throw something, to scream, to physically shake him until he understood the cruelty of what they'd been doing was overwhelming. So I walked out without another word, my mind reeling from what I'd discovered. That night, I called my mother, hoping against hope that she'd be horrified when I told her about the group chat. Instead, she defended it, saying Lauren brought it on herself by being so sensitive that if she could just learn to take a joke like a normal person, they wouldn't need to have a separate space to discuss her dramatics. That's when everything clicked into place for me. Lauren wasn't weak or overly dramatic or too sensitive. She was being systematically tortured by her entire family for their entertainment. Every tear she shed was evidence of their success, not her failure. They'd gaslit her so thoroughly that she believed she was the problem, that something was fundamentally wrong with her, when in reality, she was responding exactly how any person would respond to coordinated psychological abuse. I called Lauren immediately and told her everything I'd discovered. She went quiet for so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then she spoke, her voice small and broken. I knew something was coordinated, but they always made me feel like I was being paranoid. I started recording our conversations on my phone 2 years ago just to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining things, that the cruel comments were real and not just my oversensitivity. She'd been gaslit so thoroughly that she needed actual recordings to trust her own memory, her own perception of reality. She'd spent years in therapy trying to fix herself, trying to become less sensitive, trying to figure out why she couldn't just be normal around her family when she was never broken to begin with. The problem had never been her emotional responses. The problem was the deliberate, coordinated effort to trigger those responses for entertainment. We spent that Christmas, just the two of us, at my apartment in Minneapolis. I cooked a simple dinner, and we watched old movies, creating new traditions free from the toxic dynamics of our family. She cried twice during dinner, once when she accidentally burned the rolls and started apologizing frantically out of habit, expecting criticism and mockery that never came. The second time was when I told her she was the strongest person I knew for surviving what our family had put her through for years. That's when she pulled out her phone and showed me something that changed everything. Her call log with our grandmother from the past month showed dozens of calls, each lasting over an hour. "Grandma Helen has been helping me document everything," Lauren explained. She told me she's been in a similar chat about her for the past 15 years. They started this pattern with her when she married into the family. I sat there stunned, trying to process this new information. Our sweet grandmother, who always seemed so fragile and kind, had been targeted too? Lauren nodded, seeing my shock. She's been collecting evidence for years. She said she tried to warn Mom once about what they were doing to Grandma's sister Carol back in the 70s, but no one believed her. Carol eventually cut off all contact with the family, and they painted her as the crazy one who couldn't take a joke. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Lauren and I spent countless hours at our grandmother's house in Edina, going through boxes she'd kept hidden in her attic for decades. Grandma Helen's hands trembled as she pulled out journal after journal, each one filled with her neat, precise handwriting, documenting patterns of cruelty that stretched back to when my mother and her siblings were teenagers. I started writing everything down after your great-aunt Carol stopped coming to holidays in 1978, Grandma Helen explained, opening a faded blue leather notebook. She was 24 when she finally had enough of their games. They did the same thing to her that they're doing to Lauren now, but back then, we didn't have text messages or group chats. They'd huddle in corners at family gatherings, whispering and pointing, coordinating their attacks in person. I flipped through pages filled with dates, direct quotes, and detailed accounts of Carol's experiences. Our grandmother had been meticulous in her documentation, noting who said what, when they said it, and how Carol had reacted. The similarities to Lauren's experiences were undeniable. The same types of triggers, the same coordinated attacks, the same gaslighting afterward to make her doubt her own perceptions. "Why didn't you stop them?" I asked, my voice tight with anger at the decades of abuse that had been allowed to continue. Grandma Helen's eyes filled with tears. "I tried talking to your mother once when she was 25. I told her what they were doing was cruel, that Carol didn't deserve to be treated that way. She told me I was being dramatic, that it was just family teasing, that I was too old to understand their humor. After that, they started excluding me from planning sessions, and the treatment got worse. I could only watch and document, hoping someday someone would believe me." Lauren sat quietly beside me, methodically photographing each page with her phone. She'd barely spoken since discovering the extent of the conspiracy against her, but her movements were purposeful and determined. We were building a case, gathering evidence that spanned generations. "There's more," our grandmother said, pulling out an old camcorder from a dusty box. "I recorded some family gatherings in the early 2000s when I first got this camera. I think you need to see these to understand how deep this goes." We spent hours watching grainy footage of Christmas dinners and birthday parties from 20 years ago. There was Great-Aunt Carol in her younger days, vibrant and full of life in the early footage, slowly dimming as family members picked apart her career choices, her boyfriend, her weight, her personality. The same coordinated attacks, the same betting pools, the same group dynamics, just without the modern technology to coordinate. In one particularly painful video from Thanksgiving 1999, Carol broke down sobbing after Uncle Dennis jokingly called her a failure for dropping out of law school to become an artist. The camera caught my mother and Aunt Patricia high-fiving in the background while Carol ran to the bathroom. The next clip showed them all pretending to be concerned when she returned, gaslighting her about being too sensitive, suggesting she might need professional help for her emotional instability. "Carol sent me a letter last year," Grandma Helen said, pulling out a cream-colored envelope from her desk drawer. "She's living in Portland now, married with 3 beautiful children. She's happy, successful, runs her own art gallery. But she wrote that she still has nightmares about family gatherings, still flinches when someone makes a joke at her expense, still struggles with believing her own perceptions even after all these years of therapy." Lauren finally spoke, her voice steady but quiet. "I've been saving money for 3 years. Every extra dollar from my social work salary goes into a separate account. I was planning to disappear after Mom's birthday party next month. Just vanish without explanation, move across the country, start over somewhere they couldn't find me. I already had apartments picked out in Portland and Seattle, places where I could rebuild without their influence." I grabbed Lauren's hand, squeezing it tightly. "You're not going anywhere. We're going to fix this properly. We're not running away like Carol had to. We have evidence they didn't have back then. Screenshots, recordings, videos. We have each other and we have Grandma Helen. We're going to expose this pattern and break this cycle once and for all." "How?" Lauren asked. And for the first time, I heard anger in her voice instead of defeat. "They'll just deny everything. They'll say we're being dramatic, that we're overreacting, that we can't take a joke. They'll turn the rest of the family against us. They've been doing this for generations. They know how to spin the narrative to make themselves look like the victims." That's when I remembered something important. "The family reunion," I said, an idea forming in my mind. "It's in 6 weeks at Aunt Patricia's lake house in White Bear Lake. Everyone will be there. All the cousins, aunts, uncles, even some family members who haven't attended in years. If we're going to expose this, that's our opportunity. Maximum impact, no way for them to coordinate their stories. Lauren shook her head frantically, panic rising in her eyes. I can't face them all at once. Not with what I know now. I can't pretend everything is normal for 6 more weeks, attending dinners and gatherings, letting them hurt me for their entertainment while we wait. I don't think I'm strong enough for that kind of performance. You won't be alone, I said firmly. We have a plan, and we have allies. Grandma Helen is with us. I bet if we reach out carefully, we'll find others who've been targeted over the years. Carol might have advice. There might be cousins who opted out of the group chat, who felt uncomfortable with what was happening. We're going to build a network of support. Over the next few weeks, Lauren maintained her normal routine on the surface, responding to family texts with her usual apologetic tone, even attending a small dinner at our mother's house where she cried right on schedule when Emma made a pointed comment about her still being single at 26. What our family didn't know was that Lauren was wearing a small recording device I'd ordered online, capturing every cruel comment, every coordinated attack, every moment of gaslighting that followed. Meanwhile, I worked on accessing the Family Fun -1 group chat from my own devices. I remembered Jake had used the same password for everything since high school. His football jersey number followed by his ex-girlfriend's name. It took me 3 tries with different variations before I got in. What I found was even worse than what I'd seen on Jake's phone that day. The full scope of their cruelty was breathtaking. There were folders within folders of screenshots going back years, elaborate betting spreadsheets tracking who could make Lauren cry fastest, charts analyzing which triggers were most effective. They'd created a shared Google Drive labeled Operation Teardrops with subfolders for each family gathering. The level of organization and dedication to their cruelty was sociopathic. These weren't spontaneous mean comments. This was systematic, planned, psychological torture. My hands shook as I clicked through the Drive folders. There were compilation videos with titles like Lauren's Greatest Meltdowns, Christmas Breakdown Edition, and Top 10 Bathroom Escapes. Hours of footage of my sister's pain, edited together for their entertainment. But what made my blood run cold were the other folders I found. David, 2015-2017. Marcus Summer Trial Run, Preliminary Work, Megan. Megan was our 16-year-old cousin, a quiet, artistic girl who'd recently started attending more family gatherings. They were already starting with her, laying the groundwork for a new victim. The folder contained notes about her insecurities, her struggles with school anxiety, her parents' recent divorce. They were cataloging her vulnerabilities, preparing to exploit them just as they'd done with Lauren. I screenshot everything I could find, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I downloaded files, saved conversations, and backed everything up to multiple cloud services. The pre-reunion planning in the chat was intensifying. Noah posted that Lauren had been too stable lately, that her reactions weren't as dramatic as they used to be. We need to up our game for the reunion, he wrote. Maybe it's time to break out the heavy artillery. Emma responded with enthusiasm about hearing Lauren might be seeing a therapist. Perfect ammunition, she typed. Nothing says unstable like needing professional help for family interactions. We can work the therapy angle, make her question whether the therapist is actually helping or making her weaker. Jake added that he had some material about her college roommate who had died by suicide. That should definitely trigger a major breakdown if we play it right. Aunt Patricia, our mother's sister who was hosting the reunion, chimed in with strategic advice. Save the big guns for the main event. Let's do a test run at the pre-reunion dinner next week. I want to see if she's building tolerance. We might need to adjust our approach if she's developing immunity to the usual triggers. Lauren attended that pre-reunion dinner wearing 2 recording devices, one in her purse and one sewn into the lining of her jacket by our grandmother, who turned out to have surprising seamstress skills from her younger days. She sat quietly through the meal as Noah started his usual routine, making cutting remarks about her appearance, her career helping troubled youth, her lack of a romantic relationship. Something seemed different, though. When Noah made a particularly cruel comment about how she'd probably end up alone with cats because no man could handle her emotional instability, Lauren didn't cry. She just looked at him with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. something between pity and understanding. "You're not crying?" Noah said, clearly frustrated by her lack of response. "What, finally grow thicker skin? Or is the therapy actually working?" Lauren excused herself to the bathroom, and they took it as a victory, assuming she'd gone to cry in private. What they didn't know was that she was texting us updates from the bathroom stall, letting us know which family members were participating and what angles they were trying. She'd developed a system of coping that involved treating their cruelty like data to be collected rather than personal attacks to absorb. Emma noticed I'd been unusually protective of Lauren lately, sitting next to her at dinners, redirecting conversations when they turned cruel. Within days, the group chat lit up with new theories about my behavior. "Sarah's having some kind of mental breakdown," Emma posted. "The stress from her marketing job must be getting to her. She's projecting her own instability onto Lauren, probably jealous that Lauren actually has meaningful work while she sells products nobody needs." They started targeting me too, sending concerned texts about my mental health, suggesting I seemed stressed and should consider seeing someone, asking if I was okay in that fake worried tone that really meant they thought I was losing it. My mother called to express concern about my recent behavior, saying several family members had noticed I seemed on edge, overly sensitive, not my usual self. Jake must have gotten suspicious about the information leak because one night he tried to delete everything from the Google Drive. He sent a message to the group saying he had a bad feeling, that maybe they should clean house just to be safe. But we'd already backed up everything, following our grandmother's advice to create multiple copies across different platforms, different accounts, even physical printouts stored in a safety deposit box. The night before the reunion, Lauren, Grandma Helen, and I met at my apartment for final preparations. Lauren's hands shook as she tested the wire I'd bought from a private investigator supply website. The quality was much better than our previous devices, virtually undetectable, with crystal clear audio recording capabilities. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. Knowing what I know now, sitting there while they attack me, pretending I don't know about their chat, their videos, their decades of coordinated abuse. "Yes, you can," Grandma Helen said firmly, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. "You're stronger than all of them combined. You've survived 15 years of this torture. One more day and it's over. After tomorrow, everything changes. The cycle that started with my sister Carol, that continued through me, that's tormented you. It ends tomorrow. You're not just doing this for yourself. You're doing it for Megan, for future grandchildren, for every sensitive soul who might be born into this toxic family." I pulled up the live stream link I'd created on a private YouTube channel. The stream would be unlisted but accessible to anyone with the link. I've already sent it to Cousin Brad in California, Great Aunt Marie in Florida, and 6 other family members who stopped coming to reunions years ago. They'll be watching in real time. Some of them have their own stories, their own experiences with the family's cruelty. They're invested in seeing this exposed. "What about afterward?" Lauren asked. "When they find out what we did, when they realize we've exposed them, they'll come after us with everything they have. These aren't people who handle public humiliation well. They've spent their entire lives believing they're the good guys, the normal ones, that their victims are the problem. This will shatter their self-image." I thought about all those videos I'd found, all those screenshots, all those messages planning the systematic destruction of multiple family members' mental health. "They'll face consequences," I said. "Real ones this time." Emma teaches 5th grade at a prestigious private school in Minnetonka. Jake coaches youth soccer and works in human resources at a Fortune 500 company. Noah's a nurse at Children's Hospital. These aren't the kind of people who should be working with vulnerable populations. Children, patients, employees who depend on them for fair treatment. Lauren nodded slowly, the weight of what we were about to do settling on her shoulders. The family reunion they'd been eagerly planning would indeed be unforgettable, just not in the way they expected. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the hunters would become the hunted. Tomorrow, Lauren would walk into that lake house not as their victim, but as their reckoning. But tonight, we sat together in my living room, surrounded by evidence of generational cruelty, and planned the end of an era. We went through our strategy one more time, reviewing signals, backup plans, escape routes if things got dangerous. Grandma Helen shared stories of Carol's strength, of other family members who'd escaped over the years, reminding us that we were part of a larger pattern of resistance. The morning of the reunion arrived with overcast skies and a tension in the air that seemed to mirror our emotional state. Lauren had stayed at my apartment the night before, and when I woke at 6 in the morning, she was already awake, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that had long gone cold. I couldn't sleep, she admitted, her fingers tracing patterns on the wooden table. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, heard their laughter, felt the weight of all those years of pain. I sat down across from her, pouring myself a cup of coffee from the pot she'd made. Today, that pain becomes their reckoning. Today, we take back our power. Today, the family finds out what happens when you push someone too far for too long. We're not just exposing recent cruelty, we're exposing generations of abuse. This is bigger than just us. An hour later, Grandma Helen arrived with a bag full of equipment. She'd spent the previous evening testing everything multiple times, making sure the recording devices would work flawlessly. The wire she'd sewn into Lauren's sundress was completely invisible, and the backup recorder fit perfectly in the hidden pocket of her cardigan. She'd even prepared a third device, just in case something went wrong with the first two. "Remember," Grandma said as she helped Lauren get ready, "you don't have to do anything different today. Just be yourself. Let them think they're winning. Let them believe this is just another successful reunion where they get to torture you for sport. The longer they remain unaware, the more evidence we gather, the more complete our exposure will be." Grandma Helen pulled out a small remote control from her purse. The speakers are all connected throughout Patricia's house. I had my friend from the senior center help me set it up yesterday when I dropped off the desserts I promised to bring. Patricia was so focused on making sure I put them in the right refrigerator that she didn't notice me placing small wireless speakers in strategic locations. When you give me the signal, every room in that house will hear what needs to be heard. The reunion was being held at Aunt Patricia's sprawling lake house in White Bear Lake, the same location where so many of Lauren's worst memories had been created. The property was perfect for their purposes, isolated enough that no neighbors would hear the crying, large enough to trap victims in various corners for coordinated attacks, beautiful enough to create a facade of family harmony in photos. We drove there in separate cars to avoid suspicion. I arrived first, helping Patricia set up chairs in the backyard while she chattered excitedly about how dramatic things might get with Lauren there. "I give her 20 minutes before the waterworks start," Patricia said, arranging flowers on the outdoor tables. James has been working on some new material about her job situation. Apparently, social workers are just failed therapists who couldn't cut it in real practice. That should hit nicely. I forced myself to smile and nod, playing the role of the complicit older sister they expected me to be. Jake and Noah arrived together, already laughing about something on Jake's phone. When Noah saw me, he grinned widely. "Hey, Sarah, want to place a bet on today's breakdown? I've got $50 on a bathroom meltdown before lunch. Jake says she'll make it to dinner, but I think he's being too generous. Maybe later?" I replied, working to keep my voice neutral. I'm still setting up the dessert table. Patricia wants everything perfect for the photos. Of course she does. Jake laughed. Got to maintain that perfect family image for Facebook. Speaking of which, make sure you get video if Lauren really loses it. The compilation videos have been lacking good material lately. Lauren arrived exactly on time, wearing the pale yellow sundress we'd chosen specifically because it had pockets deep enough to conceal recording equipment. She looked fragile walking up the driveway, but I knew the strength it took for her to be there. Each step was an act of courage, each breath a small victory against years of conditioning that told her she was the problem. "Lauren!" Emma called out with fake sweetness as she emerged from the house. "So glad you could make it. We were taking bets on whether you'd have another one of your episodes and cancel at the last minute. But look at you, being brave. Did you take extra anxiety medication for the occasion?" Lauren's smile was small but steady. "I wouldn't miss it for anything," she replied. "Family is so important, isn't it?" The first hour proceeded like a twisted choreography we'd all memorized. Family members took turns making seemingly innocent comments designed to chip away at Lauren's composure. Comments about her weight. "Did you gain a few pounds, sweetie? Stress eating again?" Merged seamlessly with jabs about her single status. Still no boyfriend? Maybe you should lower your standards in cutting remarks about her career. Must be depressing working with troubled kids all day. No wonder you're so emotional. Each comment was carefully crafted to hurt while maintaining plausible deniability. If Lauren reacted, she was too sensitive. If she tried to defend herself, she was being dramatic. If she stayed quiet, they pushed harder. It was a no-win situation designed to guarantee an emotional response they could mock and document for their entertainment. "So, Lauren," Uncle James said during appetizers, his voice carrying that false concern they'd all perfected, "still working at that little nonprofit? Must be nice not having real responsibilities like the rest of us. Though I suppose someone has to do the charity work. How noble of you to sacrifice a real career for feeling good about yourself." "I enjoy helping young people who've been through trauma find their strength again," Lauren replied quietly. "It's meaningful work that makes a real difference in their lives. I can't imagine doing anything else. It's not about the money or the prestige. It's about being there for kids who have nobody else, showing them they matter." Sure," James continued, waving his hand dismissively. "Though I heard they might be downsizing soon. Tough economy for organizations that don't actually produce anything valuable. What will you do when the funding dries up? It's not like you have real qualifications for anything else. Maybe you should start thinking about a backup plan. Though I suppose there's always retail." I saw Lauren's jaw tighten, but she just nodded and excused herself to get some water. Noah and Emma exchanged triumphant looks, clearly thinking they were already breaking through her defenses. Patricia made a note on her phone, probably documenting which triggers were working. The coordination was subtle to anyone not looking for it, but once you knew, it was impossible to miss. I positioned myself strategically throughout the house as the gathering continued, using my phone to take candid photos as cover for documenting everything. I told everyone I was creating a family album, which gave me the perfect excuse to be everywhere at once. No one suspected that my real purpose was capturing evidence of their coordinated cruelty in action. The real escalation began during lunch. Patricia had deliberately seated Lauren between Noah and Jake, a tactical arrangement that put her in the crossfire of the two cruelest family members. As plates of Patricia's famous potato salad and grilled chicken were passed around, Noah started in on Lauren's appearance with surgical precision. "You know, Lauren?" Noah said, his voice dripping with false concern. "There's this new gym near your apartment. Maybe you should check it out. Might help with..." He gestured vaguely at her body, leaving the insult implied rather than stated. "I know exercise can be hard when you're dealing with emotional issues, but endorphins are nature's antidepressant. Could help with both problems at once." "Noah," our mother said, but her tone was amused rather than scolding. She was trying not to laugh, clearly entertained by her son's cruelty. Jake jumped in immediately, tag-teaming as they'd obviously planned. "Speaking of self-improvement, whatever happened with that therapist you were seeing? Did she give up on you too? I mean, did you stop going? Must be expensive trying to fix all those issues on a social worker salary." That's when Emma delivered what they clearly thought would be the killing blow, the carefully orchestrated moment they'd been building toward. "Oh, that reminds me. I ran into someone from your college the other day. We got to talking about your old roommate. Such a tragedy what happened to her." She paused for effect, watching Lauren's face carefully. "It must be so hard for you, knowing you were the last person she talked to. I heard you two had been fighting about her depression, that you told her to just get over it." The table went quiet. This was new territory, even for them. Lauren's college roommate, Stephanie, had died by suicide their senior year, something Lauren rarely spoke about even to me. The pain of that loss was still raw, still tender, and they knew it. They were weaponizing the death of a young woman for their entertainment, using suicide as a punchline in their cruel game. Lauren's hands trembled as she set down her fork. "Please don't bring Stephanie into this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know what happened. You weren't there. She was my best friend, and I tried everything I could to help her. Please, just this once, leave her memory out of your games." But Emma pressed on, scenting blood in the water. "I'm just saying, it must be hard knowing that your last words to her were in anger, that she reached out for help and you were too wrapped up in your own drama to notice how serious it was. I mean, That's probably why you work with troubled kids now, right? Trying to make up for failing the one who mattered most? That was a complete fabrication, a lie designed for maximum emotional damage. But the harm was done. Lauren's eyes filled with tears, and she pushed back from the table, her chair scraping against the deck. As she fled inside, Noah called out gleefully, "Bathroom breakdown. That's 50 points for Emma." Bonus points for using the dead roommate card. That was brilliant. The family erupted in laughter and congratulations for Emma's technique. Patricia actually applauded. That was absolutely perfect. Using real trauma for maximum impact? Genius. "I've been saving that one," Emma admitted proudly, basking in the approval. Figured the reunion was worth bringing out the big guns. Did you see her face? That was even better than I imagined. Our mother was actually taking notes on her phone. We should remember that approach for next time. Tragic events, especially ones where she might feel guilty, really are the fastest trigger. Maybe we can dig up more information about the roommate, find other angles to work. This could be a goldmine of material for years to come. I excused myself to check on Lauren, my stomach churning with disgust. I found her in the downstairs bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. When she saw me, she pulled me inside and locked the door. "I can't do this," she whispered, her whole body shaking. "They're worse than ever. Using Stephanie's death for entertainment?" She was 21 years old. She was suffering, and now they're using her pain to cause more pain. How did they become these people? "You're doing amazing," I told her, holding her shoulders gently. "Just a little longer. Remember why we're here. Remember Megan. Remember all the others they've hurt. This ends today. You're not alone. Grandma is ready. The live stream is running. People are watching. We're going to expose every single one of them." She took several deep breaths, centering herself. "They mentioned Stephanie," she said, her voice breaking. "They're using my dead best friend as entertainment. They made up lies about our last conversation. She called me that night to talk about her art project, Sarah. We laughed about her professor's weird critique. She seemed better than she had in weeks. I had no idea it would be our last conversation." "I know," I said, holding her close. And everyone watching the live stream just heard them laughing about using her suicide for sport. They're exposing themselves with every word. They think they're winning, but they're actually creating evidence of their own cruelty. Stay strong. We're almost there. We stayed in the bathroom for exactly 12 minutes, long enough for them to think they'd achieved a major victory. Lauren fixed her makeup, making sure her eyes were still red, her appearance still vulnerable. It was important that they believed they'd broken her, that their tactics were working. Overconfidence would make them sloppy, more likely to reveal the full extent of their cruelty. When we emerged, the afternoon session had moved to the backyard where Patricia had set up various lawn games. What looked like family fun was actually another coordinated attack opportunity. They'd rigged the trivia questions to highlight Lauren's failures, created a photo slideshow that mysteriously only included unflattering pictures of her, and even prepared a family roast where everyone would share their favorite funny Lauren stories. But something unexpected happened during the slideshow. Megan, our 16-year-old cousin, kept watching Lauren with an expression I couldn't quite read. She'd been quiet all day, sitting apart from the main group, her arms wrapped around herself despite the warm weather. When a particularly cruel photo appeared, Lauren crying at Christmas dinner 3 years ago, Megan flinched as if she'd been slapped. During the roast portion of the afternoon, the stories got progressively crueler. Jake told about the time Lauren had a panic attack at his graduation and ruined the whole day by needing to leave early. Noah shared how Lauren had cried at their father's funeral and made it all about herself instead of comforting their mother. Each story was twisted, context removed, cruelty disguised as humor. "Remember when she thought that guy at Starbucks was flirting with her?" Emma laughed, launching into another story. She got all dressed up for their coffee date, only to find out he was just being nice because he felt sorry for her. She cried for a week. I've never seen someone misread signals that badly. The delusion was actually concerning. That's when Megan suddenly stood up, her face pale but determined. "Stop," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Everyone turned to look at her, surprised by the interruption. This wasn't part of their script. Wasn't how the reunion was supposed to go. Vulnerable family members were supposed to stay quiet, absorb the abuse, not speak up. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Patricia asked, though her tone suggested annoyance rather than concern. "Are you feeling okay? Maybe you should go lie down if you're not feeling well." Megan's hands were shaking as she pushed up the sleeves of her cardigan. There were scars on her arms, thin white lines crisscrossing her skin, some old and faded, others disturbingly fresh. The sight made my heart drop. "You're doing it to me too," Megan said, her voice stronger now. "For 3 years now, since I turned 13, you have a group chat about me called Trial Run Megan. You track my reactions, bet on making me cry, analyze my vulnerabilities. I've seen everything. I found it when Dad left his phone unlocked. I've been watching you plan how to break me." The backyard went absolutely silent. This wasn't part of their program, wasn't something they'd prepared for. One victim standing up was unprecedented. But 2? That had never happened before. "Megan, honey," Patricia said, her voice sharp with warning. "You're being dramatic. Pull your sleeves down right now. We don't air family business like this. You're embarrassing yourself." "No," Megan said, tears streaming down her face, but her voice steady. "I have the group chat. I've screenshot everything. Want me to read some of your messages? How about the one where Aunt Emma bet $20 I'd start cutting myself by freshman year? Or when Jake said I was even easier to break than Lauren because I was already damaged from my parents' divorce?" She pulled out her phone with trembling hands, scrolling through screenshots. Or this one from Noah saying that targeting me young would create better long-term results? Or Mom writing that I needed to be toughened up, that making me cry now would help me in the long run? You've been systematically trying to break me just like you broke Lauren, and I'm done pretending it's normal. The family erupted into chaos. Patricia lunged for Megan's phone, but I stepped between them, blocking her path. "Don't touch her," I said firmly. Noah started shouting about privacy violations and how dare she invade their private conversations. Emma was frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to delete evidence from the cloud storage. Jake stood up aggressively, his face red with anger. That's when Grandma Helen appeared in the doorway of the house, holding her small remote control. Her presence commanded attention despite her diminutive stature. "Enough," she said, her voice carrying surprising authority. 50 years of this poison ends now." She pressed the button, and suddenly her voice filled the air from speakers throughout the house and yard. The recording began with Grandma's younger voice, measured and precise. October 15th, 1978. Carol arrived at Thanksgiving dinner wearing a new dress she'd saved for months to buy. Patricia immediately commented that it made her look desperate for attention. James added that no dress could fix her mannish frame. Within 40 minutes, Carol was crying in her car, too humiliated to return to dinner. The family stood frozen as their grandmother's voice continued, documenting incident after incident with the precision of a court reporter. Date after date, cruel comment after cruel comment, a methodical catalog of decades of coordinated abuse. November 23, 1979. The family created a betting pool on whether Carol would bring her boyfriend to Christmas. When she did, they spent the evening making jokes about his ethnic background until both fled in tears. "Turn it off," our mother screamed, her face contorted with rage. "Mother, how could you? This is a betrayal of your own family. You're destroying us." But Grandma held the remote out of reach, her eyes steady and determined. 15 years of documenting your cruelty to Carol. 20 years of watching you do it to others. Carol, Derek, Marcus, Rachel, Lauren, and now Megan. How many more children are you planning to destroy? How many more generations will this poison touch? Jake made a move toward the house, probably intending to find and disconnect the speakers, but I blocked his path. "Sit down," I commanded. "We're not done. The full truth is coming out today. Every cruel game, every betting pool, every coordinated attack. All of it ends here." He looked like he wanted to push past me, but something in my expression stopped him. I pulled up the live stream on my tablet, turning it to show the viewer count. 43 family members are watching right now, I announced loudly. including Carol from Portland, Derek from Seattle, Marcus from Denver. They've seen everything. Every cruel comment, every manipulative tactic, every moment of today's planned attacks on Lauren. They heard you using a young woman's suicide as entertainment. The color drained from Patricia's face as she processed this information. You're live streaming this? Without our consent? That's illegal. Every second, I confirmed, including your confession about planning psychological torture for entertainment, including the fact that you've been doing this to a minor, including Emmy's fabricated story about Lauren's roommate. All of it is documented, recorded, and witnessed by dozens of people. That's when everything truly unraveled. Noah tried to grab my tablet, but Lauren stepped forward, no longer the cowering victim they expected. Don't touch her, Lauren said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Don't touch any of us ever again. The time for your games is over. We're done being your entertainment. We're done believing we're the problem. The problem has always been you. You manipulative little witch. Emma snarled, her carefully maintained facade finally cracking. You planned this whole thing. You've been pretending to be weak, setting us up. This is entrapment. This is defamation. I'll sue every last one of you for destroying my career. How dare you record us without permission? No, Lauren said calmly. You planned this. For years. You created spreadsheets tracking how to hurt me most effectively. You edited videos of my pain for your entertainment. You built a systematic process for psychological torture. We just finally decided to show everyone what you've been doing. The only difference is that your audience is bigger than you intended. Jake was typing furiously on his phone, panic evident in every movement. The Google Drive is gone, he said, his voice cracking. Everything's been deleted. Years of work, just gone. When did you? This isn't possible. I had security on that account. Nobody else had access. This is theft. You've stolen our property. I smiled coldly. From your account, maybe. But I backed up everything 3 weeks ago. Every video, every screenshot, every betting spreadsheet. Every cruel compilation you made, every strategic planning document, every message celebrating someone's pain. It's all safe, all preserved, all ready to be shared with your employers, your communities, your children when they're old enough to understand what kind of people their parents really are. The younger cousins were crying now, some from shock at the revelations, others from recognition of their own experiences. A few tentatively moved closer to Megan and Lauren, forming an unconscious alliance of victims against their abusers. The power dynamic of the family was shifting before our eyes, the carefully maintained hierarchy crumbling as truth replaced manipulation. This is insane, Noah shouted, his carefully styled hair disheveled from running his hands through it in panic. We were just joking around. Every family teases each other. It's normal. It builds character. You're all overreacting to normal family dynamics. This is what snowflakes do. They can't handle regular human interaction, so they claim abuse. No, Grandma Helen said firmly, stepping forward with more vigor than I'd seen from her in years. Families don't create point systems for making children cry. They don't bet money on causing mental breakdowns. They don't compile videos of their relatives' pain for entertainment. They don't strategize about how to exploit deaths and traumas. What you've been doing has a name. It's called sadistic abuse, and it's been poisoning this family for generations. Patricia turned on our mother, desperation evident in every word. This is your fault. Your kids started this whole victim mentality. They've always been too sensitive, too weak. If you'd raised them properly, they could take a joke like normal people. We were trying to toughen them up, prepare them for the real world. Now look what's happened. They've destroyed our family. Mom's face crumbled as the reality of what she'd been part of finally seemed to penetrate her denial. For the first time, she appeared to truly see what they'd been doing. Oh, God, she whispered, sinking into a chair. Lauren, baby, I thought. I didn't realize. I thought you understood it was just how our family showed love. I thought you knew we didn't mean it. You took notes, Mom, Lauren said quietly, her voice carrying years of pain. You sat there with a notebook and wrote down which insults made me cry hardest. You helped them strategize. You contributed ideas. You never once in 15 years told them to stop. You never once comforted me after they broke me. You told me I was too sensitive, that I needed to learn to take a joke. That's not love. That's collaboration in abuse. The sound of a car door slamming made everyone turn toward the driveway. A woman walked up the path. Older now, her hair gray at the temples, but unmistakably Carol. Behind her was a tall man with kind eyes and a protective posture. The family members who'd driven her away decades ago stared in shock at her unexpected appearance. "Hello, family," Carol said, her voice steady but cold. "I heard there was a reunion. I thought it was time I attended one last time." Patricia gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "Carol? How did you can't be here. This is a private family gathering. You gave up your right to be here when you abandoned us 30 years ago. I've been watching the live stream," Carol said, gesturing to my tablet. "Watching from Portland with several other survivors of this family's cruelty. When I saw you doing to Megan what you did to me all those years ago, when I heard you using that poor girl's suicide to torture Lauren, I knew I had to come. I had to see your faces when you finally got exposed for what you are." The man beside her stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Christopher Reeves, Carol's husband. I'm also a therapist specializing in family trauma and narcissistic abuse patterns. I've spent 10 years helping my wife heal from what you people did to her. The nightmares, the self-doubt, the inability to trust her own perceptions. All gifts from your systematic abuse. And now I'm watching you do it to children. It ends today. We don't need some quack doctor psychoanalyzing us." James spat, but his bravado was crumbling. "This is family business. You don't know us, don't understand our dynamics. Every family has its own way of relating. Just because you don't understand our humor doesn't make it abuse. Carol's just bitter because she couldn't handle normal family interaction." Dr. Reeves remained calm, his professional demeanor unshaken. "I'm not here in a professional capacity. I'm here as someone who's held my wife while she sobbed over memories from 30 years ago. I'm here as someone who's watched her flinch when anyone makes a joke at her expense. I'm here as someone who knows exactly what systematic emotional abuse looks like, and I'm witnessing it in real time." Megan ran to Carol, who wrapped her arms around the teenager. "It's okay, sweetheart," Carol whispered. "You're not alone anymore. None of you are alone. What they've done to you is not normal. It's not love. And it's not your fault. You're perfect exactly as you are. Your sensitivity is a gift, not a weakness. Don't let them convince you otherwise." The family split into clear factions. Some, like our mother, seemed genuinely horrified by the revelation of what they'd been part of. Others, like Noah and Emma, remained defiant, insisting everyone was overreacting, that we were destroying the family over normal teasing. Patricia stood in the middle, looking between the two groups as if trying to decide which narrative to embrace. "You're all crazy," Emma shouted, her teacher persona completely abandoned. "This is illegal. Recording us without consent, streaming it to people, making us look like monsters. I'll have every one of you arrested. I'll sue you for everything you have. You've ruined my career, my reputation, everything. Over what? A few jokes? Some family fun?" I pulled out a piece of paper from my pocket. "Actually, according to the legal research I did, we're in a one-party consent state for recordings. Everything we documented is perfectly legal, unlike what you've been doing to minors, which could be considered criminal harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Megan is 16. You've been targeting her since she was 13. That's child abuse." That's when the real consequences began to sink in. Lauren pulled out her phone and started sending emails. Her fingers steady now, empowered by truth and supported by allies. "What are you doing?" Jake demanded, trying to grab her phone. "Stop whatever you're doing right now. This is family business. You don't air it to outsiders." "I'm sending the evidence," Lauren said calmly, holding her phone out of his reach. "To your soccer league, Jake. To the school board where Emma teaches. To the hospital where Noah works. To every employer, volunteer organization, and community group you're affiliated with. They deserve to know who they're trusting with vulnerable populations." "You can't do that," Noah shouted, his face purple with rage. "You'll ruin our lives." "Over what? Some private family conversations? Some jokes that went a little too far? This is vindictive. This is cruel. You're the abuser here, not us. But Lauren remained steady. You tried to ruin mine for entertainment. The difference is I'm just showing people who you really are. I'm not creating anything, not lying, not manipulating. Just sharing your own words, your own videos, your own documented cruelty. Patricia's phone started ringing. Then Emma's. Then Jake's. The real world was already responding to the evidence of their cruelty. Within minutes, Emma received a call from her principal requesting an immediate meeting. Jake's soccer league director texted about suspending him pending investigation. Noah's supervisor at the hospital wanted him to come in immediately to discuss the concerning videos that had been forwarded to them. As the afternoon dissolved into chaos, with family members screaming, crying, and turning on each other, Lauren stood in the center of it all, finally free from their power. She wasn't crying now. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't trying to make herself smaller to avoid their cruelty. She was standing tall, surrounded by people who truly loved her. Me, Grandma Helen, Carol, Megan, and the other survivors who were finally seeing justice. The reunion they'd planned so carefully, the one where they'd intended to break Lauren completely for their entertainment, had become something entirely different. It had become the moment their decades-long cycle of abuse finally ended, exposed to the light and unable to continue. The hunters had become the hunted, their cruelty turned back on them in the form of long-overdue consequences. As we finally left that house of pain, Lauren linked arms with Megan and the other young cousins who'd been targeted. "We're going to be okay," she told them, her voice strong and certain. "All of us. We're going to heal from this. We're going to learn what real family feels like. We're going to break this cycle and create something better. You're safe now." Behind us, the family that had once seemed so powerful, so united in their cruelty, was crumbling. Their carefully maintained facade of normal family dynamics was shattered, their games exposed, their victims freed. Some screamed threats, others begged for the footage to be destroyed. A few sat in stunned silence as they processed the magnitude of what they'd been part of. The reunion they'd planned so carefully had indeed become unforgettable, just not in the way they'd intended. Instead of another successful torture session, another compilation video for their private entertainment, it had become the day their victims found their voices, their power, their freedom. It had become the day the cycle of generational abuse finally, definitively ended. The chaos that erupted after we left Patricia's lake house was immediate and far-reaching. My phone buzzed constantly as family members who hadn't attended the reunion discovered the livestream link being shared across social media platforms. Lauren sat in the back seat of my car with Megan, both of them scrolling through the flood of incoming messages while Grandma Helen drove ahead of us, leading us to a restaurant she'd chosen in advance. Somewhere safe, somewhere none of them would think to look for us. "Emma's principal just emailed me back already," Lauren said, her voice steady but exhausted from the emotional toll of the day. "He wants to meet with me Monday morning to discuss the evidence and determine next steps. He says the school board is taking this very seriously, especially given that she works with young children who could be vulnerable to similar treatment." Megan's phone rang. She looked at the screen and shrank back into the seat. "It's my mom. She's called 17 times already." "Don't answer," Carol said firmly from the passenger seat where she'd insisted on riding with us for support. "Patricia will try to manipulate you into recanting, into saying you exaggerated or misunderstood. She'll use every trick she knows. Guilt, promises to change, threats about destroying the family. Don't fall for any of it." We pulled into the parking lot of a small Italian restaurant in a neighboring town, somewhere the family would never think to look for us. The adrenaline that had carried us through the confrontation was wearing off, leaving us all shaky and uncertain about what would come next. Lauren kept refreshing her email, watching as responses poured in from the various organizations she'd contacted about the family member's abusive behavior. "Jake's youth soccer league director wants all the video files," Lauren read from her phone. "He says they're launching an immediate investigation, and Jake is suspended from all activities pending the outcome. Several parents have already contacted them expressing concern about him having access to their children. One mother said she always felt something was off about him, but couldn't put her finger on it until now. Grandma Helen pulled into the spot next to us, and we all walked into the restaurant together, a strange procession of survivors from different generations of the same toxic family. The hostess seated us in a private dining room in the back, perhaps sensing that we needed space to process whatever had brought us together. As we settled around the table, the weight of what we'd just done began to sink in. Carol turned to face us all, her eyes moving from person to person with understanding. Listen carefully, all of you. What's going to happen over the next few days and weeks will be intense. They're going to come at you with everything they have. First will be the guilt trips. How could you destroy the family? How could you hurt people who love you? How could you be so cruel? Don't buy into it. You didn't destroy anything. You simply revealed what was already broken. Her husband, Christopher, nodded in agreement. Then will come the threats. Legal action that will never materialize because they know the evidence is against them. Threats to turn other family members against you, to ruin your reputations, to make your lives miserable. Document everything but don't engage. Let them reveal more of their true nature with every threat they make. After that, Carol continued, will come the fake apologies, sudden realizations that they were wrong, promises to change, requests for family therapy. Some might even seem genuine. A few might actually mean it in the moment. But without serious individual therapy and accountability, they'll slip back into old patterns. Abusive family systems don't change just because they've been exposed. We ordered food, though none of us had much appetite. As we picked at our meals, more messages poured in. The family group chat, which Lauren had been added back to by someone trying to berate her directly, was in complete meltdown mode. Patricia was threatening to call the police and report us for harassment and illegal recording. Noah was raging about his career being destroyed over petty family drama. Emma had gone silent, which was somehow more ominous than the threats. At our grandmother's house later that evening, we set up what Lauren jokingly called our war room. Laptops and phones were arranged on the dining table. Documents were being backed up to multiple cloud services, and we were organizing the responses from various organizations. Carol called her therapist to check in while Christopher offered guidance on what to expect from the family's reaction patterns. Patricia is in full damage control mode, Christopher observed, reading the family Facebook page on his tablet. She's already posting about how the family is going through a difficult time due to misunderstandings and mental health issues among some members. Classic deflection and gaslighting. She's trying to control the narrative before others can share their own perspectives. Lauren's phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She looked at me questioningly, and I nodded for her to answer it on speaker. Hello? Lauren, it's David. The male voice was uncertain, emotional. I saw the live stream. I'm in Boston now. I've been in therapy for 5 years dealing with what they did to me. I just wanted you to know you're not alone. What you did today was incredibly brave. David had been a cousin who'd disappeared from family events about 7 years ago. The family had always said he'd become stuck up after getting his PhD, too good for his roots. Now we knew the truth. He'd been an earlier victim, driven away by the same systematic cruelty. He talked for an hour, sharing his own experiences, offering support and validation that only someone who'd been through the same thing could provide. The next morning brought a new wave of intensity. Emma's principal had placed her on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation. Parents who had seen the videos were organizing, with several filing formal complaints about her fitness to work with children. The local news had picked up the story after someone leaked it, though they were focusing on the broader issue of family abuse rather than naming specific individuals. Jake's situation exploded when 3 teenage girls from his soccer team came forward to say he'd made them uncomfortable with comments about their bodies and emotions, always framed as jokes or motivational tactics. Their parents were furious that someone who displayed such cruelty toward his own family had been trusted with their daughters. The soccer league's investigation expanded beyond just the family videos. Noah tried a different approach, showing up at my apartment building at 7 in the morning. The doorman called up to warn me, and I told him not to let Noah in under any circumstances. He stood outside for 2 hours, alternating between shouting apologies and threats until I finally called the police to report harassment. Watching him be escorted away in the back of a patrol car was surreal. My brother, the golden child, finally facing consequences. our mother's journey was perhaps the most complex. She called Lauren repeatedly, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful apologies to angry accusations and back again. "I heard about what happened at the hospital," one message said. "Noah's suspended pending investigation. Are you happy now? You've destroyed your brother's career, his life, everything he worked for." Another message left just hours later. "I can't stop thinking about that notebook. Did I really write down ways to hurt you? How did I become this person? Please, baby, talk to me." We decided as a group that Lauren shouldn't respond yet. The emotional whiplash of our mother's messages showed she hadn't processed the reality of her participation in the abuse. She was still cycling between victim and perpetrator narratives, unable to sit with the discomfort of being someone who had caused harm. Real change, if it was even possible, would take time and work she hadn't even begun. Megan's situation was the most immediately concerning. As a minor still living with Patricia, she was vulnerable to retaliation. Her father, Patricia's ex-husband, had seen the live stream and immediately filed for emergency custody, citing the evidence of abuse. Patricia fought back viciously, accusing him of parental alienation and manipulation. The custody battle would become ugly, but at least Megan had one parent willing to protect her. 3 days after the reunion, something unexpected happened. A message appeared in my LinkedIn inbox from a name I didn't recognize. "Hi, Sarah. You don't know me, but I work with Emma at Lakewood Elementary. I wanted to thank you for exposing what kind of person she really is. Several of us teachers have noticed troubling patterns in how she treats certain students. Always the sensitive ones, the ones who cry easily. We've reported our concerns now that we understand the pattern." Similar messages began trickling in about other family members. A nurse who worked with Noah described how he seemed to take pleasure in patients' emotional distress. A parent from Jake's soccer team shared that their daughter had quit the sport entirely after his emotional manipulation tactics. The pattern of cruelty extended far beyond family bounds. They'd been practicing on us, perfecting techniques they used on vulnerable people in every area of their lives. Lauren decided to channel her experience into something positive. She started a blog called Breaking the Silence, a family scapegoat's journey, where she shared not just her story, but resources for others trapped in similar situations. Within a week, it had thousands of visitors and hundreds of comments from people sharing their own experiences with family abuse. The comment section became a support group of sorts, survivors finding each other and realizing they weren't alone. The legal threats materialized as expected, but went nowhere. The lawyer Patricia hired told her bluntly that she had no case. The recordings were legal. The evidence was their own words and actions, and pursuing litigation would only bring more attention to their behavior. Emma tried to claim defamation, but couldn't point to a single false statement. The truth, it turned out, was an absolute defense. Some family members tried to salvage their reputations by claiming they were peripheral to the abuse, that they'd just gone along with it but never initiated it. The evidence proved otherwise. The Google Drive backup showed enthusiastic participation from people now claiming ignorance. Aunt Jennifer, who was trying to maintain her position on several charity boards, was shown to have contributed some of the cruelest suggestions for psychological manipulation. 2 weeks after the reunion, we received an unexpected ally. Uncle Robert, Patricia's brother who'd moved to Arizona years ago, reached out with his own story. He'd been the family scapegoat before Lauren, targeted throughout his teens and 20s until he escaped under the guise of a job transfer. He'd watched the live stream with his therapist, finally understanding that his experiences weren't unique, that the family had a pattern spanning generations. Robert shared documentation he'd kept from his time as their target, letters, emails, even some early digital photos of family gatherings where his distress was visible while others laughed. He'd spent 20 years believing he was too sensitive, too weak, too unable to take a joke. Now, at 55, he was finally understanding that he'd been abused, that his reactions were normal responses to abnormal treatment. The ripple effects continued expanding. Emma was formally terminated from her teaching position after the investigation revealed concerning patterns in her classroom management. Several former students came forward with stories of how she'd humiliated sensitive children, always maintaining plausible deniability but causing real psychological harm. One parent said their daughter had developed school anxiety specifically related to Emma's class. Jake's situation worsened when someone leaked the family videos to local news. His face became associated with family abuse in the community. The soccer league permanently banned him from coaching youth sports. His employer placed him on leave after concerns were raised about his judgment and treatment of others. He blamed Lauren for everything, unable to see that his own actions had created the consequences he was facing. Noah's nursing career imploded spectacularly. The investigation at the hospital revealed multiple complaints from patients and colleagues that had been dismissed or ignored over the years. Patients described how he seemed to enjoy their discomfort, making cruel jokes about their conditions or emotional states. He was reported to the nursing board, facing potential loss of his license. His response was to double down, creating a blog claiming he was a victim of cancel culture. As the weeks turned into months, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. Those who'd participated in the abuse found themselves increasingly isolated. Their social circles shrank as people learned about their behavior. Churches, clubs, and community organizations quietly distanced themselves. The image they'd worked so hard to maintain, of a close-knit, loving family, was shattered beyond repair. Meanwhile, the survivors began building something new. Lauren and I grew closer than we'd ever been, our relationship transformed by the truth. Megan, now living with her father, joined us for regular dinners where laughter wasn't cruel and tears weren't entertainment. Carol visited monthly from Portland, becoming the mentor figure we'd never had. Grandma Helen, freed from decades of silent witnessing, seemed to grow younger and more vibrant. We established new holiday traditions that bore no resemblance to the torture sessions of the past. Thanksgiving became a potluck at my apartment with chosen family, survivors and allies who understood that love shouldn't hurt. Christmas was spent volunteering at a shelter, replacing performative family photos with genuine service. Every gathering was marked by respect, kindness, and the understanding that everyone's emotions mattered. Lauren's therapy intensified as she worked through decades of trauma. There were hard days when the programming kicked in, when she'd apologize for things that didn't need apologies or panic over minor social interactions. But there were breakthrough days, too, when she'd stand up for herself without fear, when she'd recognize manipulation tactics and shut them down, when she'd comfort Megan with the wisdom of someone who'd survived and thrived. The blog evolved into something bigger than Lauren had imagined. She was invited to speak at conferences about family abuse and gaslighting. Her story resonated with thousands who'd been told they were too sensitive, too dramatic, too weak. She partnered with therapists and researchers studying family scapegoating dynamics, contributing to academic understanding of systematic emotional abuse within family systems. 6 months after the reunion, we received word that Patricia was selling the lake house. The site of so many traumatic gatherings would no longer be the family headquarters. She'd become increasingly reclusive, her social status in tatters. The handful of family members who still associated with her reported that she spent most of her time raging about the injustice of it all, unable to accept responsibility for her actions. Emma attempted a comeback of sorts, starting a YouTube channel about being wrongfully canceled. It failed spectacularly when viewers researched her background and flooded the comments with evidence of her cruelty. She deleted it within a week. Her teaching career over, she eventually moved to another state where her reputation hadn't preceded her, though we kept tabs to ensure she wasn't working with children. Jake's marriage, which had seemed perfect from the outside, crumbled when his wife finally understood the depth of his cruelty. She'd noticed how he treated service workers, how he spoke about his colleagues, how he enjoyed others' discomfort, but had dismissed it until seeing how he'd tortured his own sister. The divorce was acrimonious, with her lawyer using the family abuse evidence to establish character in custody proceedings. A year after the reunion, something remarkable happened. We received a letter from a law firm representing Great Aunt Carol's estate. She'd passed away peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by her loving chosen family. In her will, she'd left her considerable assets to be divided among the family scapegoats, past and present victims of the family's cruelty. Lauren, Megan, David, Robert, and several others we didn't even know about each received enough to ensure their financial security. The letter that accompanied the bequest read, "To those who survived what I couldn't face alone, use this freedom to build the lives they tried to deny you. Never apologize for your sensitivity. It's not a weakness. It's proof of your humanity in the face of those who lost theirs. Live boldly, love freely, And know that breaking the silence was the greatest gift you could give to future generations. Lauren used her inheritance to expand her advocacy work, creating a nonprofit supporting family scapegoat survivors. She hired other survivors, creating jobs that understood trauma and prioritized healing. The organization offered support groups, legal resources, and emergency funds for those escaping abusive family systems. Within 2 years, it had chapters in 12 cities and had helped hundreds of people break free. The extended family gradually split into 2 distinct groups. Those who'd participated in or enabled the abuse found themselves in an increasingly small circle, still blaming everyone but themselves for their circumstances. They occasionally attempted to reestablish contact, usually when they needed something: money, reputation, rehabilitation, someone to blame for their latest setback. These attempts were consistently rebuffed. The other group, consisting of survivors and those who genuinely reflected on their participation, began the hard work of healing and accountability. Our mother, after a year of intensive therapy, reached out with a genuine apology letter that showed real understanding of the harm she'd caused. We began carefully rebuilding a relationship with clear boundaries and the understanding that trust would take years to repair, if it ever fully could. Some surprising allies emerged from unexpected places. Cousins who'd been silent observers came forward with their own stories of discomfort with the family dynamics, admitting they'd been too afraid to speak up. A great uncle revealed he'd stopped attending gatherings decades ago because he couldn't stand watching the cruelty. These connections helped build a new kind of family, one based on mutual respect and genuine care. Lauren's story went viral when a major publication picked it up, leading to a book deal. She wrote with unflinching honesty about the experience of being systematically tortured by those who were supposed to love her most. The book became a bestseller, resonating with millions who recognized their own experiences in her words. She donated a significant portion of the proceeds to mental health organizations supporting abuse survivors. The speaking engagements that followed took her across the country, where she met thousands of survivors. Each event ended with the same message: your sensitivity is not a flaw. Your emotions are not too much. The problem was never you. It was a system designed to break you for entertainment. You survived. Now it's time to thrive. The audiences, filled with people who'd been told they were too sensitive their entire lives, often ended these talks in tears of recognition and relief. 3 years after the reunion, Megan graduated high school with honors. Her speech at graduation thanked her father, her chosen family, and specifically Lauren for showing her that strength sometimes looks like vulnerability, that crying doesn't make you weak, and that the people who truly love you will never use your pain as entertainment. She was headed to college to study psychology, determined to help other young people trapped in abusive family systems. We held a celebration for Megan's graduation at my apartment, the same space where we'd planned the reunion confrontation. The contrast was profound. Where once there had been evidence of abuse spread across the dining table, now there were graduation cards and letters of congratulations. Where we'd strategized exposure, now we celebrated growth. Where we'd documented cruelty, now we created new memories of genuine joy. The family members who'd refused accountability faced continued consequences. Emma never taught again, bouncing between retail jobs and blaming cancel culture for her circumstances. Jake's coaching ban extended to other sports as word spread in the youth athletics community. Noah lost his nursing license and spent his time writing angry blog posts about victim mentality, while ironically refusing to acknowledge his own role in creating actual victims. Patricia became the cautionary tale she'd never intended to be. Once the social queen of her community, she was now isolated. Her lake house sold, her reputation in ruins. The few family members who still spoke to her reported that she lived in the past, constantly rehashing the reunion, unable to accept that her carefully constructed world of cruelty had been exposed. She still maintained everyone else was too sensitive, even as her life crumbled around her. But for every story of justified consequences, there were stories of healing and growth. Robert started his own support group in Arizona for male survivors of family abuse, breaking the stigma that men shouldn't be emotional or vulnerable. David became an advocate in academia, using his platform to discuss how family abuse can impact professional development and mental health. Even some peripheral family members who'd been uncomfortable with the dynamics but too afraid to speak up found their voices. Lauren met someone at one of her speaking engagements, another survivor who understood the journey from victim to advocate. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, understanding, and the knowledge that healing isn't linear. When they married 2 years later, the wedding was small, filled with chosen family who understood that blood doesn't make family, love does. Megan was her maid of honor, standing proud and strong beside the woman who'd saved her from decades of planned abuse. The ripple effects of that single reunion continued expanding. Lauren's nonprofit grew into a national organization. Her book inspired countless others to recognize and escape their own abusive family dynamics. The research she contributed to helped therapists better understand and treat family scapegoating. Most importantly, the cycle that had destroyed so many lives across generations was finally, definitively broken. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Lauren and I would marvel at how different our lives had become. Where once family gatherings meant strategic emotional torture, now they meant genuine connection. Where once tears were currency in a cruel game, now they were honored as valid expressions of human emotion. Where once we'd been told we were too sensitive, now we understood our sensitivity as the gift it had always been. Proof that we'd maintained our humanity despite everything. The last time I heard from any of the abusive family members was a group email from Patricia, sent on what would have been the date of the annual reunion. She'd written a long, rambling message about how we'd destroyed a beautiful family tradition, how we'd robbed future generations of their heritage, how our sensitivity had ruined everything. I deleted it without reading to the end, then blocked her email address. Some voices don't deserve space in our lives. Instead, that day we held our own gathering. Survivors, allies, and chosen family coming together to celebrate resilience. We shared stories not of pain, but of growth. We laughed without cruelty, cried without shame, and supported each other without conditions. As I looked around the room at these people who'd chosen love over manipulation, kindness over cruelty, I realized this is what family was supposed to be all along. Lauren stood to make a toast as the sun set over Minneapolis, painting the sky in shades of healing pink and gold. To everyone who was ever told they were too sensitive, too emotional, too much, she said, raising her glass. To everyone who survived family members who confused cruelty with love. To everyone who broke their silence despite the fear. And to the family we've built, the one that celebrates our tears as much as our laughter. May we always remember that our sensitivity is our strength, our emotions are valid, and our stories matter. As we clinked glasses, I caught my grandmother's eye. At 93, she'd lived to see the cycle broken, the poison extracted, the family patterns transformed. She smiled at me with tears in her eyes. Not tears of pain or manipulation, but tears of joy and relief. We'd done it. We'd exposed the truth, survived the backlash, and built something beautiful from the ashes of generational trauma. The reunion that was meant to be Lauren's destruction had instead become her liberation, and through her courage, the liberation of so many others. The hunters who'd stalked their prey for entertainment had discovered what happens when the hunted find their voices, their power, and each other. They'd learned that cruelty disguised as humor is still cruelty, that abuse disguised as love is still abuse, and that eventually, the truth always finds its way to the light. As our chosen family gathering continued into the evening, filled with genuine laughter and authentic connection, I thought about all the future children who would grow up in this new version of our family. The one built on respect and real love. They would never know the fear of being targeted for entertainment. They would never have their tears turned into someone else's sport. They would grow up knowing their emotions mattered, their sensitivity was valued, and their family was a safe place to be exactly who they were. That, more than any consequence faced by our abusers, was the true victory. We hadn't just exposed them or escaped them. We'd replaced them with something so much better. We'd proven that cycles can be broken, that patterns can be changed, that what you're born into doesn't have to be what you accept. We'd shown that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to play their games anymore. And Lauren, the girl they'd tortured for sport, the woman they'd tried to break for entertainment, had become the hero of her own story and the inspiration for so many others. She'd transformed decades of pain into purpose, cruelty into compassion, silence into strength. The family reunion they'd planned so carefully had indeed changed everything, just not in the way they'd intended. It had been the day the scapegoats finally, beautifully, powerfully won.